Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. ModzvilleUSA here, and we got another video. This, what you're looking at, is a Trinket MO. Now this is a multi-purpose device. You can program whatever code to it you want. I'm sure it's got a whole lot of neat little uses, but what I use it for is to mod and unpatch Nintendo Switch. Now, as you probably know, unless you're completely new to the Switch modding scene, an unpatched Switch is a Switch that was made within the first year, give or take, of the Switch's lifespan. Summer 2018 is when the Switch got exploited, and immediately Nintendo did a hardware revision that patched out the original method of modding a Switch. Now, if you have an unpatched Switch and you're currently running custom firmware, odds are that you're using a jig and a payload injector, or you used a jig one time to install something called auto RCM, so you no longer need to use the jig. Now, what this does is it removes the need of any bullshit dongles and jamming metal into your Joy-Con rails, and is a nice internal clean solution to just be able to turn your console on, and boom, a payload of choice. You just put the payload you want, name it payload.bin in the root of your SD card, and boom, you're booting to it. You can also toggle, you can have multiples, payload 1.bin, payload 2, toggle it by pressing volume up. Very elegant solution for modding a Switch. Significantly better than using an external dongle and a jig, and it's cheaper too if you know how to do it. This costs about $10 to $15 depending on where you get it, whereas an external payload injector, those will go for about $30-$40 depending on the one you're getting. So this is cheaper if you have the skill set and the knowledge to do it. And if not, my emails are always open. I get back. I don't check them as much as I used to, but depending on when you're watching this, if you want one of these installed, just make sure your Switch is unpatched. And we're going to do that right now. I'm going to show you the prereqs here. Ba-boom. So if you're already running a custom firmware using a jig payload injector kind of method, then you already know you're good. But if not, and your Switch is old enough and you want to check it out, you come to this site here, ismyswitchpatch.com. You enter the prefix, and you enter the first 6 of your serial number, and it'll let you know right away if it's for sure unpatched. It's gonna be green, like this one here, the one I'm about to work on. If it's yellow, you're probably going to want to just get a jig and use something like Tegra Smash on your computer with a cable, and see if you can boot a payload. If you get a black screen, then it's no good. It's patched. If you can't boot a payload, then it's patched, and you're going to need to look into getting an SX core or a SX core clone, something like that. Now, really, the only other thing here is, boom, go down in the description. I want to have a zip file. This is everything you need. There's 2 files to flash to the Trinket, and this guy is our diagram, which we'll get to in a bit. But let us start by hooking up our Trinket to our computer. But boom, there it is again. So I'm going to plug this guy in. Okay. Now what you need to do is to get it into the mode, the adequate mode for flashing the firmware of this thing. We got to go 1, 2. Just like that. Beautiful. And what you should see when you come back to your computer, over here, trinket boot. It should be something like that. So what we're going to do, you know what, I'm going to open multiple, because it likes to close itself. Let me open another one. Open a new window here. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. So we got two of the same one open. So we're going to take one right here. We're just going to drag it over. Oh, that's right. Drag and drop isn't working. Let's see. For whatever reason, drag and drop on my fucking Windows is busted. So I'm going to copy paste. I think I just need a reboot. And there we go. It flashed. And now we're going to drag and drop, but in my case, copy paste the number 2 file over here. I'm going to go right click, I'm going to go paste. And there it is. So this is how you're, let's go back to the camera here. The LEDs on these things tend to change, tend to be different colors, at least at this part of the install here. So, but it should be a rhythm, something like this. Now let's give it a push. There it is. So it goes blink, 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 and then it turns off. Little flash blink. That is good. This is what you want. It's not going to show up on your computer anymore unless you do the same thing, the 1, 2. But you never need to update the firmware on this. Only the payload files in the future. So it's totally fine. We don't really need access to this once it's installed, like ever again. It's simply you just upload the updates to firmware, anything like that. That doesn't affect the trinket itself. That affects the payload you're using. So say it's Hakko, you would need to update, get the latest Hakko, put it on the root, name it payload.bin. That's what needs updating. The firmware of this thing, this is good forever. So what we're going to have to do now, we're going to unplug it. And we're going to need to remove this USB port here and the 2 LEDs. So I want to get my helping hands. We're going to clip it on just like that. Oh yeah, my new desk cam is awesome, man. Remember the good old days using an overhead webcam and get all that screen tearing? It was dog shit. The setup's much better now. Okay. So this is important. I learned this one the hard way. We're going to need a hot air rework station to remove this USB port. I do it about 350, about 6 or 7 airflows, fine. But the most important thing here is to pre-tin all of these anchor pads, these 4 in the corners. Boom, 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 and boom. We're going to come in, add fresh solder to make our lives much, much easier, because it requires way more heat if you don't do this. So it doesn't matter if we bridge, whatever, it's fine. Or we just want to add more solder here. And while we're in here with the gun, these 2 components on the right need to come off. So I'm just going to flood it. There we go. Simple as that. Those are gone. Now I'm going to get a better angle here for myself, just to make this easier. And these 2 will stay, so we're not going to be removing those. So try not to bridge those at all. And that looks great. Now, as many of you guys know, I like to use the paste flux, but for the sake of making a video's nicer and more pleasant on the eyes, we've got some of this Kester 951 no clean flux as well. There's some Kester solder here, leaded solder, very nice premium shit. So yeah, this no clean flux here, I'm just gonna dab a little bit of that on here. Okay, hot air rework station's on. It's still heating up. Airflow is at 7. Let's see what my heat was last. It should be at like 350, something like that. This doesn't take long. Let's see if I can get a better shot for you guys. I don't want to block the shot too much. We get it good and molten. You take your tweezers. It should come right up. Just be careful, make sure it's hot enough up top, because you don't want to, yes, you don't want to rip the, let's get that off. It's important that you don't rip these pads, so never use any force. It should come out, you know, as Voltar would say, just like butter. It's very, you don't want to tug on it. If you feel resistance, it's not ready. From the pads, that is. So yeah, that would take much longer if you didn't pre-solder these anchor pads here. It's very important you come in and do those, otherwise you might end up melting the trinket before you get the USB port off. But this is exactly right, exactly how we want it. No USB port. These components are removed, so we're ready to tear open the switch. Let's do that. Okay, here we are. Down to the board. This is as deep as we need to go. Now, we're going to need to do a little bit of prep work here. First thing, unplug the battery. You don't want to work on the system with the battery connected. That would be foolish. All of these ribbon cables, these can stay. We'll be removing the heatsink. Not the heat spreader here, but the actual heatsink, because I'd like to do a little bit of fancy routing over there. And what I do, this seems to be divisive. I've had my main trinket that I've had forever. I just completely didn't put this metal shielding back in, as it has like a clear back, and I like seeing the board as opposed to, you know, a shield like this. If you do that, all you got to do is cut out the portion that holds the SD card slot here. Otherwise, there's going to be a gap. Your SD card slot isn't going to sit properly, so you at least need this portion at the very, very minimum. What I like to do these days, typically, we don't need much room here. I like to just snip the metal shielding. And I just use this line. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs, we need room for the trinket to sit. We're going to be mounting it right here. And I've seen comments of people being like, it'll fit. We don't want to smash it, guys. Don't smash a chip up against the motherboard. That's just, that ain't right. And especially with these, because it's got this button. If you try to smash it, this button will always be depressed unless you remove it entirely. I say just snip the heat spreader right there. So with that in place, and put this down. Just use it as a guide to see what we're working with. And for the time being, I want to put the battery back in, just so this sits flush for a moment here. There we go. Got some 3M double-sided tape. I like using this stuff. It's very thin. If I remember, I will leave a link to the tape that I have. It's 3M double-sided tape. Very strong adhesive. It is, let's see, does it have the, it's 300L5 SE is the model of this stuff. And it's made for screens and stuff of that nature, things that need very low clearance on their adhesive, not thick, not like a gasket or something like that. This is very low profile stuff. And we're going to play it extra safe here. What I want to do, I want to add some Captain tape to the metal, and we're going to be applying the trinket to this. You know, it's typically not the best to use tape on tape, but I've done this before. It works out quite well. It's not going to go anywhere, and you just really don't want anything to short out. That is the most important thing. The double-sided tape should prevent that from happening, but we're not taking any chances. And yeah, I'm just coming in here with my Exacto knife, getting a real nice, perfect cut here. You want to be delicate. You don't want to go slicing components, but it shouldn't be too hard to go real easy. Go real easy here. You know what I mean. Okay. That's a beautiful, beautiful trinket mount right there, ladies and gentlemen. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Unplug that. Let's take a look at the diagram. Okay, so I always keep this up on my screen here. So here's the diagram, and we're going to be doing everything. So we've got, this one controls the Joy-Con strap. So we're going to need to unplug those cables, and we're going to be taping them to the speaker to get them out of the way so we don't burn them with our iron. I like these alt points as opposed to using I like to use as little capacitor legs as possible. The only one where there's no way around it is the most difficult point here, which is volume plus strap. What the volume plus strap does is it essentially makes it so auto RCM is always enabled, but much better than auto RCM, as you know, you're not going to get stuck in like RCM mode and have your battery drain or anything like that. So the volume plus strap is a very, very, very nice option if you can handle it. It's super duper brittle, so we're going to go through all of the precautions I like to do, because if you just solder a wire to that and then try wiggling it around and moving it and routing it, even if it's soldered on solidly, you're going to snap that leg right off. So you want to get the wire completely routed and secured to the board somehow, and pre-tinned or whatever, like curved, all of that shit, before attaching it to that. That's what you want. You want it all routed before that, so there's just no movement once it gets connected, because that's super easy to break. If you do break it, you can remove it, bridge it, and solder to the bridge. Much easier to solder to, but you know, it's a resistor, and ideally we keep it there. So yeah, that's that. Everything else is pretty simple. These two people seem to be afraid of. I don't think they're that bad. And the rest are fairly simple. A lot of people have a hard time right here too, as you need to solder to these pads from the USB port that we removed, and the rest are real big, beefy joints. So we're gonna go left to right and save the hardest for last. So let's get into it. Okay, as you can see, I pulled the tabs here already for these rails. So we're going to want to remove these. And never stop paying mind to the fact that these need to plug back in. So we got to be real particular about the way we route our wires here. We need to make room for these cables to come back in. The wiring needs to very much stay out of the way. So I'm just going to use Scotch tape here. Doesn't matter what kind of tape you use. The whole point of what I'm taping right now is to literally just keep these cables safe, out of the way, and you know, something not too adhesive, because as you can see, I've got the tape on the pins here. We don't want to gunk those up, so we get a bad connection. You know, we might want to hit those with alcohol before plugging them back in. But yeah, we're going to be soldering to these two pads and these two pads, and I lay the wire flat on them. They are connected completely. Bridge them together. It's totally fine. So let us start. I want to try this with the no clean Flux. Just get a little bit on there. And we're going to be using 30 AWG wire. I've got my iron set to 350 Celsius. Might need a bit more. I don't know exactly why. I'm assuming it's a lead-free solder thing. Correct me. Let me know in the comments for everyone who's, you know, more knowledgeable than me down below about the hows and the whys. But yeah, the Nintendo Switch takes significantly more heat to work on than other boards. Pretty much every other board I work on just needs more heat to flow. Just how it is. I'm gonna go over this. And just lay it on top. Just heat it up. Alright, a little bit more solder to my iron here. Get a proper connection. Okay. Very nice. Okay, and the next one's right here. It's by a chip, so you want to be a bit more mindful. I route these at the end. I just kind of pull off a bit too much wire and trim it down as need be later. Don't mind wasting a bit of wire here and there. Okay, so this one. Yeah, I'm not liking this flux. So I adjusted the camera angle here just to make my life a bit easier. Sorry to get this shit all cloudy on you guys, but okay, got it. Whew. I'm actually having a hell of a time here. Doing this on camera. I'm used to having my head right up in that. So that's the joint. I'm gonna pause it and off camera. I want to trim that back. I've got too much lead there to be comfortable with, because we do need to wrap that around. I don't want that touching that capacitor if it's not supposed to. So I'm gonna clean this up just real fast. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cleaned up those joints. Redid this wire here. That looks much nicer. And this is how I like to route it. Use the tweezers to get a nice angle. You don't want to tug on them without supporting the wires, because otherwise, when you put a lot of tension on the pads, it could end poorly for you. So I pinch the wires, give them a tug, and I route this one between here, this guy on the other side, so we got plenty of room to plug the ribbon cables back in. This looks great. You also got to be mindful of this guy here. So let's cut a corner. Right here is pretty good. Okay. There we go. That should keep it out of the way. And next we're going to remove the heat sink. So just 3 little screws, same silver screws as every other one. I do like that about the Nintendo Switch, is the screw variations relatively minimal, easy to keep track of. Okay. All 3 screws. Got this foam tape here. Should come right up. Okay. So I like to route these cables over top. Like right here is cool. You can get it in this corner. It's nice too. You can have it run along the top of this. Here's what we'll do. We'll do something interesting. We'll train the wires with our tweezers here. So these 2 on here, one there, and then it's gonna go in that way. It's gonna go in that way. That's pretty good. Okay, so look at the diagram again. Okay, we're gonna do the one on the right. Goes to the top left here. So let's do that one. Okay, the left wire goes the second one from the top on the right. Okay, very nice. Now I want to clean the thermal paste off of this before I go crazy. I'll keep touching it. Okay, guys, we're looking pretty good. So here's how I got these cables routed around the corner. Easy access to the SD slot as we've trained them to go this way, and we'll be able to plug these guys in no problem. So we're looking pretty good. That's one of the more tedious wiring. Everything on the right side here is pretty simple. So let's do the ground and the USB disconnect strap next. Okay, so for the ground pad, very easy, very simple shit. There's this big test pad to the left of the USB port here. Boom. Even at 350 Celsius with my relatively large for the pads we're working with chisel tip, it ain't melting like butter, you know. It still takes a little bit. The pads here, there's something else. Okay. Apologize for the camera being a little shaky. Cool. That's good. And this pad is... it says GND right on it. We're gonna route it. We'll route it like this. Give it a clip. And then we're not gonna connect that just yet because we gotta get to these guys pretty soon. Deal with this hot boy. I'm gonna use a better angle for me, not for the video. Add a little bit here. So this pad here is USB disconnect strap. And be mindful of all the little resistors next to this pad. Very nice. Okay, and this one goes to number 2 on the left hand side. Goes across the trinket. So I'm going to tin that. Get it cut. Get out of the way. I'm not going to connect it just yet. And the next ones are these two right here. I forgot to mention, it's kind of like, it seems to be like 50-50 whether these pads that we're soldering to are pre-tinned or not. If not, you could use a fiberglass pen to scrape it a little bit, but just using your iron, you'll tin it up with the iron. It might just take a couple motions before you get a good wetted joint there. So something to be mindful of if yours doesn't have isn't pre-tinned like this. So these seem to give some people some trouble. I've seen, like, some people are frightened by this. I don't know why, but I like to connect the wires here to the trinket first, as that is those need to be a bit more precise. So we got these 5 pads from the USB port. So one goes to the second from the left. So we just lay the wire right on top of it like this, like so. I'm monitoring my video, so my head's tilted. Makes this more challenging than usual. I come with my tip. Literally just press it down. And that's all there is to it. Now the one on the left they're going to these 2 pads here. The one on the left goes to the pad on the right. The right goes to the one on the left. It's a bit disorienting, but it's something good to keep in mind. There we go. We had a glare in there. It wasn't looking too good on camera. But now that we've cleaned up the flux, you can tell that looks quite beautiful. 2 solid joints. It's really not that bad. You just lay it on down. Coming flat. So the one on the right goes to the one on the left over here. So we're doing that one first. Should do. Press it down. Yep, that looks great. Yeah. Now this one. Very nice. Great. Now would be a good time to connect the other wires here. So we're going to do ground. Yeah, I forget how crucial the tweezers are to this. You really want to have the nice pair of curved Hakko tweezers when you're doing something like this and manipulating wires. The curved tweezers are the shit. I use them all the time for restoring PS2 and PS1 memory cards. Not many people talk about that. Those pins get bent, man. It's like the same thing as the old Nintendo 72-pin connector. Exact same process. Do it to every single one. We're looking good. Now the last one we're gonna do here is this damn thermal paste, man. Last one's the hardest one. Let me take care of this paste right here. I don't like it. Okay, so we're gonna pre-tin once again over here. And same with the last two wires. This is definitely a solder it to the trinket first scenario. For opposite reasons. The precision is going to be on the volume plus strap. And real quick, well, let's get this connected. I'll say what I was going to say, but real quick, this is nice to have. As you turn the console on, it'll go straight into, RCM mode. It's very nice. However, it's totally not needed. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, the alternative to this is enable auto RCM in Hakko, and just use that. Every time you do a system update, you will have to re-enable auto RCM, but it serves pretty much the same purpose. And this is a little functionally nicer, as it's impossible to get stuck in auto RCM, and have your battery die. And I believe it adds some nice little features, but yeah, if you don't feel comfortable with this, fucking up your switch is obviously worse scenario than just having to turn auto RCM on here and there and missing out on some features you may not even care about or use. So this is totally optional. You know what it does, you know that it's difficult, so just be warned. So we're going to be soldering to this guy, the top leg of that resistor right there, in between the two connectors right here, ZIF connectors, I suppose is what you call them. So I need to get this pretty exact. Okay. All right. And this is something where I don't even feel comfortable doing this on camera. I gotta get right up on that shit with my eyeballs. So I want to get this all configured and explain myself afterwards. Okay, sorry if the camera's a little shaky here. So we've got the wire coming. It's routed underneath the NAND chip here. Comes around, and I do all of my manipulation of this cable before I solder it on. So I curve the angle here, and it's got one little tiny angle going over to the right to connect to the chip. Now, when you're coming in here, you come in with the tweezers. You set it flush on the board, and you get it right up. Maybe pre-tin it. Pre-tin either the wire or the resistor. Get it right up against the leg, not on top of the leg. You want it to be flush. Makes it a bit stronger. Then come in and just flow it to the board. Getting it soldered on there's not the hard part, but if you were to wire it up first and then try routing the cable, so delicate, super, super, super easy. Like, just does not take much to just rip that leg right off of that resistor. So yeah, I've seen it happen. It's super delicate. Happened to me the very first time on my very first switch, and yeah, it's just a doozy. So just treat it with the respect that it deserves, and just take it seriously. Get it routed before. You don't want that snapping. But if you route everything beforehand, you're going to be good. And just for extra measure, I want to come on in and hit it with a dab of hot glue. The only other thing that you really want to be mindful of is just the lead. You just want a little bit, enough to get that guy connected. Because if it's just fraction of a millimeter over and connects shorts out to that resistor on the right there. Let's poke it with the tweezers. If it shorts over to this guy, your switch is gonna be acting like the volume plus button is always pressed. So if that's an issue you have when you turn this on, is your console, if you can't like go up or if it acts like the volume button is pressed when it's not, this guy is shorting out to the resistor to the right. I've had that happen. It's easy to miss with your eyes, as this is all very small stuff here. But yeah, it's completely wired up, so I want to give this a little dab of hot glue, something I don't do often in many different mods when it comes to wiring, which is due to the delicate nature of that. If somebody comes in here, they start messing with wires, even with a little bit of tension coming off of this, I just want to play it safe and do a little dot of hot glue there, keep it locked in and keep that pad from ripping. So I'm gonna get that done, and I'll see you guys when we test this out. Okay, dudes, so we got a little hot glue in here, secured that fucker. Now hot glue's, it's not my favorite, but it is easy to deal with. In case you didn't know, if that needs to come off at any point, just hit it with some rubbing alcohol. Comes right up. Not too bad. The important thing is not this resistor. Just not having any tension on it. Eliminate the risk of that being pulled up. So if this stays closed, no one's coming in here fucking with it, it's gonna be fine forever. And yeah, let's test it. It's probably good to do. I feel good about my joints. I think everything's gravy. So let's check it out. Boom, green light. Get that logo, and boom. So at this point, it would be looking for the payload.bin on the SD. We don't even have the SD card. Not adapter. Portion of the switch, whatever you want to say there. So we can go to the information. And the menu's nice. This is, if you've been in the Switch scene for a while, this will look familiar. It's similar to the old school original Hakate, or volume up and down will get you around, It's got some exclusive options. Battery stats. It's got like an SXOS migrate feature so you can like get your license from one and move it to another. Some cool shit in here. Fixed battery stats. Yeah, browse for payload management, backup options. It's got cool shit. But for the most part, you put a payload on the root of your SD. Good to go. So that's it. At this point, we just seal her up, and we put the payload we want to boot on the root of the SD. We name it payload.bin. You can have multiples. Payload 1.bin, payload 2, and you just press volume plus when you're booting it and toggle to the payload that you want to go to. It's a feature I've never used. I literally just always use Hakate as my main payload, and then from there launch whatever I want, atmosphere, SX, whatever it is that I want. I just tweak that, have that set up in Hakate, and bada bing, bada boom. Best way to go. Stop dicking around with jigs and dongles. Get something internalized. And there's more out there too. Before I go, I should mention that it's not just the Trinket MO. There's like pre-configured one. There's a Rebug made one. There's some that I see on AliExpress with very strange instructions I haven't bothered with. They're cheaper and they come pre-programmed. Honestly, I just really like the Trinket MO. That's what I've always used. Tried and true. Like the shape of it, like the design of it, like how it fits. It's got a nice diagram, everything about it. Mwah. So I just keep using these. I love them. But there's other options, and This guide is usable, at least for all of the joints on the Switch. It's gonna have different pads on the chips, but yeah, it's gonna want the same connections. But leave a like. Just real quick, I want to show you what it looks like when you have the SD card properly set up with something named payload.bin on the root. So I've got Hakko here, and turn it on. Nintendo logo, boom, Hakko, and we're in. It's that simple. You can set up Hakko to launch stock firmware, custom firmware Emunin, custom firmware Sysnin, Atmosphere, SX, whatever you can get to from the launch menu. And then if you have different things like Linux and whatnot, then you can have that set up here too. Laka, all that shit. So Hakko is still my favorite entry point because of all of the various, have so many options from here to go into. Reboot to that, and toggle go somewhere else. Bada bing, bada boom. But leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Give it a shot if you got the balls. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.